Welcome to another adventure in real estate with your investor guys, Bill and Kevin on the Investor Guys podcast. Bill, how's it going?
It's going well, my friend. Nice and toasty here. Yeah, I was laughing at the weather reporters about, oh, this is so unusual. And I'm like, huh? I've lived in Texas 30 years. We have a series of 100+ degree days every single summer. And it's not like, oh, we usually have 101 and now it's 120. It's 105, it's 107. Yeah, that happens to us a few days every summer. And they're just like, oh, this is crazy. Yeah. And saw a guy that was on a weather band that had jumped on YouTube and said, yeah, I don't know why this is going on. You and I have an idea why it's going on. Because I don't know why this is going on, but our weather isn't any different now than it's been the last 100 years. They were talking about that this is the hottest in recorded history. And then they went back, even you go back to the 1860s. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure we didn't have satellite recording of weather in the Civil War days. But anyway, it's
Yeah.
nice and warm here, and but beautiful skies. And about to go look at some property. As soon as we're done, headed to look at some property.
Well, it's always hot and crazy hot in Florida during the summer, so I honestly couldn't say it's any different. I do remember living in California, though. I remember every other year they're talking about high temperatures in Death Valley, just like they're doing this year again. The recorded temperature has always been in Death Valley, not the Sahara Desert or anything else. It's been in Death Valley, California. And it's just crazy stuff. Real quick before we get started, I want to apologize for everybody. I didn't shave today, and I'm not wearing a tie because I wounded my left wing here, so I can't get my arm up to my face. I'll be okay. It's just a really, really horrible sprain. But maybe next time we do a show, I'll actually be shaved. I apologize for that. Today we are going to talk about more subject to, because we've been talking about a lot of subject to, because that is the strategy that really probably the primary strategy you should be focusing on right now. Real estate is changing fast. In fact, I was looking at numbers just the other day. We're not even through the summer, but they're already talking about how summer sales have slumped in most markets. And that is because of the interest rates, because the Feds, what they've done with the interest rates. There's no rocket science behind it. We can see inflation. We can see that we're in a recession or that we're headed to recession if you don't believe that we're already in a recession. Interest rates gone up. Yes. There's no rocket science. You don't need to be, sitting in front of a computer full of graphs or anything else to figure this out. Okay. So the strategy that Bill and I are definitely turning to, and other smart investors are turning to, not that Bill and I are the smartest investors, but the strategies that make sense right now are subject to. So we've been talking a lot about subject to, and we'll probably continue to talk a lot about subject to. Today, Bill's idea was to tell you guys how to set yourself up for financing each of the three different stages of a subject to deal. Now, we've told you before, you've heard this before. You can buy real estate with no money down. And you can. It's rare, but it can happen. Okay. Don't hold your breath, but every once in a while, those deals do. Been lucky and had a few of those deals myself. I've actually had people gotten free houses, no money down. But that is not going to be just no money down deals. You're not going to be doing a whole lot of deals. So you are going to have to come up today. And I'm going to toss it over to Bill right now.
So there's a lot of different ways that we can do the money. Obviously, because for me, that is the primary source of funding. Easiest to get. Most life centers, there's three different profit centers, and we're going to look at one of those profit centers, a down payment profit center. So when you're looking at picking up a property subject to, one of these, but in many and maybe even most cases, subject to properties are properties that have option for the homeowner not to have a foreclosure. So let's say they're $20,000, they've got about $60,000 in equity. So then we'll negotiate additional funds to make sure that they get something out of their equity. Maybe we give them 20, and then we catch up the mortgage. Now we do to the mortgage company. So we've got $40,000 do it, seller financing. We're going to sell it pretty much the way we bought it. And then what we've given on the property. So if we put 40,000 in it, I'm going to be looking at a payment, and that difference sell it, and what I had to pay, call it my down payment. That's profits. That's the first profit center to the money to get into the deal, use private money. And then I'm going to turn around and acceptable spread between what I'm receiving with.
All right, you're breaking up a lot there, so I will take a break and we'll reset the connection at the same time. Back in just a minute.
Ooh.
We are back for segment 2. Hopefully we got a better connection this time. And we're talking about the various different types of funding that you have to have in place in order to be able to confidently go out and start acquiring subject to deals. Now, every subject to deal is different. And that's kind of the fun in this, is because a lot of it is negotiating. A lot of your negotiation is going to have to do with two different things. One of them is going to be, what is the seller going to be willing to take? And the second part of that formula is, what am I able to pay? What financing, what funding am I able to come up with in order to do this deal? I don't want to promise them something that I'm not going to be able to do and spend all my time, waste their time on a deal that I put together because I don't have the funding in place. So understanding what goes into this recipe and making sure we have those ingredients, in other words, our funding and everything else that goes in place, is going to be key into getting us into these particular deals. Now, the first segment, we covered having some money in order to get these people greased up a little bit and willing to exit the property. Now we're going to talk about how to have funding in order to, a lot of times we have to go in and repair these properties, because these people, if they knew they were losing their house, a lot of times they didn't do maintenance on the property. A lot of times if they'd have had the money to do maintenance on the property, they probably would have put it towards their mortgage. So a lot of times we're getting properties that need maintenance, that have some things that need to be done. So we have to have funding for that. We also have to have funding for our taxes, our insurance, our mortgage payments, everything else that we have to do in getting that mortgage caught up. So let's talk about that in this segment, Bill.
Well, so on our catch-up money, we looked at that in the first segment as private. And I'm doing the same thing if I've got rehab money. That's very crucial when you're looking at a sub-2 deal, that you understand rehab inside out, because you got to spend money on this property on top of the fact that I've got to go catch up the mortgage, maybe not, and most likely I'm going to give the seller some cash, even if it's just enough money to get them moved or to help them move. But when I start looking at all of that, if I have to spend rehab money on top of it, it better be tiny. It better be very, very minimal, because I can easily get myself into a situation where I've overspent. I can't recoup all my cash out of pocket in my down payment. And then now I've still got a skinny monthly spread coming in. Even if I've got $200 or $300 a month, $400 a month, that's not a big spread on my monthly payment spread, which is our second profit center in a sub-2 deal. That first profit center we talked about in the last segment, the difference between all the cash out of pocket to make the deal happen and the cash that I get in from my buyer. So that's usually a pretty decent check. And then a much smaller check is now this monthly spread. So if I've got rehab money in there, I can easily put myself in a position where my monthly spread is negative. And I'm going to tell you, if you do that, that's a mistake. If you get into negative cash flow because you think that property is going to go up in value, you might as well go buy raw land somewhere, because that's a raw land speculation. Yeah, it's going to go up some point, and that's probably true. at some point, and it may be 10 years from now before that starts to happen again.
Yeah, understand the reasons why you're buying these properties and the reasons, the motivations to pick up these particular properties. Now, we're motivated to get these properties because it's easy to do a subject deal. That's a great motivation, but don't let that be your only factor for picking up a property. Make sure you're doing numbers. Make sure you've got all of your numbers, all of the costs, all of the expense, everything else in place, knowing what you're looking at before you are getting into this deal, because a negative cash flow deal is a negative cash flow deal. It does not matter how easy it is to get into. I promise negative cash flow deals are the easiest deals to get into. We do not want a negative cash flow deal. I call that paying to play, and you're basically paying to play real estate investor, but you're not really a real estate investor. You're basically owning real estate and not making any money. An investor invests to make money back from a deal. That may be down the line. That may be every month. I don't personally want to sit on a property for 10 years and hope that it goes up and bank on that.
Yeah.
I want to pay that money in my pocket. To me, it's not worth it. That's too much of a gamble. I love going to Las Vegas, but I don't gamble because I love my money too much. The odds are always against you as the gambler. The odds are always with the house. We want to have those odds in our favor. We want to be the house. That's why we want to know what those numbers are before we get into any particular deal at all. And if the odds aren't stacked in our favor, if those numbers aren't in our favor, it's not a good deal. Doesn't matter how easy it is to get that deal. It's not a good deal. Again, those negative cash flow deals, they're always easy to get. Always easy to get a property that's going to cost you money. But that's not.
Amen to that.
So, anything to add before we jump into our next segment?
No, I think that's pretty much got it. Just understand that you've got to make sure that the monthly payment that you've agreed to make is going to be less enough difference between the monthly payment you're going to receive from your buyer that you're very happy about that monthly spread. So I've got that down payment spread on the front end. Now I want to make sure I've got a healthy monthly spread between what my debt service is costing me, that's servicing the sub-2 mortgage, and the money that I'm bringing in for doing seller financing when I sold it.
And I want to point out really quick, without getting too into it because it'll take a lot more time. A lot of times we're getting these properties, these subject twos, and we're putting tenants in these properties. Okay, we can factor what we're going to reasonably get for rent, and I always look at the low end numbers. Bill knows this. I always look at low end numbers on rent when I do my numbers. Okay, and I factored that. Am I going to be able to rent this property out on the low end for this market? And that doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to charge low end. I may charge mid range. I may even charge top of the line. Okay. But I want to do my numbers conservatively. So I know I'm going to be able to get X amount of dollars for sure, because that's the low end in this market. So I do my numbers. I'm cash flowing. I understand that now I may have this property for 2 months while I'm fixing it up. But month number 3 or month number 4, I should have tenants in this property. And my strategy might be to have tenants in this property for a year and then flip this property, or to try to do a seller finance or whatever it is that my end strategy is going to be. But if I have tenants in this property and they're paying their mortgage on this property, they're paying my taxes, they're paying my insurance, then that is part of my formula that I'm entering into this particular deal with. And that's why knowing your market is very important. Bill loves to work in a specific market in Dallas and Fort Worth because he understands what the rents are. Bill can drive through a neighborhood and look at a house and say, that's a 3.2, that's going to get X amount of dollars a month. That's a 2.1, that's going to get X amount of dollars a month. Understanding that market is going to make it a lot quicker and a lot easier for you to see those deals popping up. Doesn't mean you shouldn't run your numbers, but you're going to say, oh yeah, that's one I need to take a look at. That's one I need to take a look at. That's one I need to take a look at. All right, so we're up on a break. We'll be back in just a second. And we are back with our final segment of the Investor Guys podcast. Now, real quick, if we seem a little flustered today, it's because our technology today has not been working correctly at all.
On either side. This is crazy.
Yes. We're still getting delays. We're still getting some choppiness. And I'm fighting with basically doing everything with one arm today. So if we seem flustered and don't seem like our normal selves, that is fine. So today we're doing
like a real estate deal. It doesn't always go smooth.
It doesn't, but you know what? You work your way through it. You get it.
Right.
You come out the other side, and hopefully, after editing and everything else, is a good show. We've got enough good electronics.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about exit strategies, because this is our final strategy for being able to get out of this property. Now, remember, when we're getting out of a subject to property, it's not just us selling the property. Okay, we are having to get the original owners out of the property at the same time. And I'm not saying get them physically out of the property. We need to get them off of the mortgage. Okay, so when we're refinancing them, we are buying out their mortgage, because remember, they're staying on the mortgage. That was subject to means. Subject to means they are staying on the mortgage, subject to that underlying mortgage staying in place. So when we get out of the property, we have to understand what was the motivation for our sellers in the first place. What did we promise them in the first place? And how are we going to exit out of this property and get them out? And you have to also remember that even though we control this property, depending upon how we set it up, we may not be able to sell this property without the assistance of those sellers, because those sellers are on the note. So make sure that you structure your deal correctly on the front end, and there's the whole nother 10 shows for that, so that when it comes time to sell the property, these homeowners didn't change their mind and decide that they don't want to sell the property, they want to stay in it, and you don't have any recourse because you didn't set it up correctly. But understand that when we get out of this, we are financing them out of their mortgage, and we need to also put money in our pocket and able to make this worthwhile for ourselves. Bill, I'm going to toss it back to you.
Yeah, we're going to do that. As you know, I sell these properties the same way we buy them. I sell them subject to, and then we give them a balloon period, usually no less than 3 years, but certainly no more than 5, to be able to, the new buyers get refinanced out, get this property solely in their name, get the original sellers long gone, and there's got to be a spread there as well. And that's usually the big paycheck. So out of the subject to deal, at least for me through the years, is this end check, this payoff check. That's the big spread. So I may have made 15 or 20,000 on the front end. I may make $200, $300, $400, $500, $600 a month in that monthly spread. But when I get to the back end, I expect that number to be like 40 or more. And if it's not, then I've probably picked up a bad deal. So if I can get 40 on the back end, and I got 20, 25 on the front end, and then let's say I got $400 a month for 3 years, so that's 36 months. That's another 12 plus almost, 12.5 or so. So now I look at that and I go 20 spread on the front end, 12 spread on the monthly, and 35 on the back end. And I've got a pretty decent deal, considering that I used none of my money or none of my own credit. So my return rate is infinite. It's uncalculable because there's no basis in my cost. So I love those kind of deals, and you can just do those. You can start running hard now doing sub-2 deals.
And let's talk real quick about what Bill's talking about as far as on his back end strategy. His back end strategy is seller finance, essentially. He is holding the note for somebody else who wants to get into the property. We talked about this in the last couple of episodes. This is a deal that adds more value to your property just because it makes it easier for a buyer to get into. I will do this. I don't myself. I don't like dealing with all the extra moving parts of seller finance. So a lot of times I will try to just get rid of the property. I will put it up on the market, or in many cases, and I still have properties from when we did this back in 2007, 2008, where I still have properties. I refinanced the original mortgage holders out of the property. I still have those properties. I still have tenants in those properties paying mortgages on those properties. A lot of the properties, especially in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, because we had properties in Dallas-Fort Worth area back in 2007, 2008 when all this happened last time. I sold those properties, and I sold them with a profit because the market in Dallas did not hit the same way it hit in other places. It went down a little bit, but it didn't go down significantly. So when it started to rebound, it was one of the first markets that rebounded. And we know why. It's because everybody was moving to Texas, everybody was moving to Florida, everybody was moving to a lot of those markets. I turned around and I was able to sell those properties for a profit 3 years later, 4 years later, and cash out the original homeowner. Or if I had made a deal with them that I wouldn't hold it for more than a year, I refinanced them out by doing mortgage modification. We did a lot of mortgage modifications on a lot of these properties, and we ended up buying the property out for mortgage modification as a partner in these deals. And that's what these mortgage holders are. They're a partner of yours now. Okay, you have made them a partner in this property for as long as you continue to have this property and control the property. They're going to work with you in order to get this mortgage modification, and then you're going to get the financing for that mortgage modification in order to just buy it out. So lots of different strategies. Know what your strategies are, what your options are. Okay, like Bill will go into a deal and he'll say, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do this as my strategy, but he has a backup that's going to be backup number B. He's got a backup that's going to be backup number C. If all three of those backups are going to give him the returns that he wants, then he has a good, viable deal. If he's got one backup that might be iffy, then it's probably not worth entering that deal for. If you have to say, well, I'm going to try really hard and try to make this happen, or I'm going to try really hard and hope that this happens. Those aren't strategies. Those are a wish and a prayer. So don't base your decisions on I really think or I really hope. Okay, base them on what you know is going to be. We don't know for sure what the future is, but we can base our best guess, our best estimates on what the past has shown us to be and what the different cycles are. And if we understand what those are, and it's easy to understand. If we don't understand it ourselves, we can talk to somebody. You can talk to somebody like Bill, you can be like me, talk to somebody like in your local real estate club, okay, who will be happy to fill you in on what it's more likely to happen in a year, what's more likely to happen in 2 years, what's more likely to happen in 3 years. And hopefully things will change with our economy for everybody's sake. Because you know what? I love buying real estate, but it kind of sucks paying $5 a gallon for gas, which is where we're headed. So as much as I love buying real estate, I'd love for eggs to be back to a 99 cents a dozen. So hopefully things will change. Until then, let's take advantage of what God has given us, which is a blessing.
Yep.
And we just need to see it that way, and we need to go ahead and work it that way.
Amen, brother.
And before we get out of here?
Nope, I think you nailed it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us on a challenging Investor Guys podcast, and we will see you guys back here next time. Thanks.
See you, everybody.